So good evening, friends. This is really a proud moment for me to introduce someone who is a distinguished alumnus of IIT Bombay. He is a veteran of 50 years in the field of quality and management. He is a well-known consultant, keynote speaker, trainer, author, and storyteller. I'm talking of nobody else than Mr. Suresh Lulla. Mr. Suresh Lulla has rubbed shoulders with the giant of quality, the father of quality globally, Dr. J.M. Juran. To know about Mr. Suresh Lulla, I think I can spend the whole webinar talking about him. But I think today I will try to know from Suresh Bhai as to when did he meet Dr. Juran and what was his interaction with him and how his mentoring helped him to come to the field of quality. So, sir, if you will tell us, so that I think every month we are going to talk to you and we'd like to unfold some chapter of your life. So today I thought let's talk about Dr. Juran and you.
Thank you, Dr. Vijay Agarwal. Everybody knows you who's in the audience. And greetings to all the participants. As would be expected, Dr. Agarwal has asked me an off-track question, something that can only get an emotional response. So, in my early years, when I returned from the US as a graduate of reliability engineering, that is where I had seen the handbook of quality authored by Dr. Juran. That was in its second edition. I was fascinated. Coming back to India, I worked in a management consultancy firm called A.F. Ferguson and Company. It was acquired by Deloitte subsequently. In this company, where everyone was a chartered accountant giving management consulting, I was the odd one, an engineer giving management consulting. So they had a difficult client in Kirloskar Cummins, which is now Cummins, India. And I went in there and the president met me. And he kept looking at me with great fascination. He finally asked me, "Are you influenced by Juran?" And he put Juran's handbook on his desk. And that's where our bonding started, Mr. Ramchandran and myself. Now, that was the start. 7 years I consulted. I rose, he rose to being the chair. Along the way came another client, Caterpillar, competitor to Cummins. They had adopted Juran internationally. So the president here, Mr. Ramesh Daga, he was fascinated by me and, we had a happy story. Mr. Daga and Mr. Ramchandran were competitors. Both the head offices were in Indiana, Columbus. On one flight, the two got seats adjacent to each other. And I became the topic of conversation. They said, "We've got to do something about this guy. He's very different." They went to the Juran Institute without telling me. I'm in a job. They went to the Juran Institute, represented me, and came back with a contract, said, get the hell out of your office. And that's how my first introduction to Juran came. He called me for an interview to Paris, and the rest is from there on. So it wasn't strategized, it wasn't planned, there was an unseen hand that led me there.
Great. I think I must say that this is fascinating to know even this part of the story of yours. And for those people who have not heard of Dr. J.M. Juran, I will say that they should please Google and find out more about him. And I can say that along with Deming and Juran, they can be considered as the pioneers of quality movement, which of course started post Second World War, and they were responsible for transforming Japan from being a country which was as famous as what is China today to become like a very, very well-respected nation for quality. So I would say brilliance of Mr. Lulla. I would like to say that besides many things that he has done, and which I said, maybe we'll talk in a lot of subsequent sessions. But one of the things that has fascinated me is his capacity to narrate stories. And friends, we all know that how important stories are in our lives. So whether it is Ramayana or Mahabharata or many other epics, or you relate to stories. The stories, whether they are factual or they are mythology, whether the stories are about animals or the stories about ghosts, anything. But I think we have not really used stories from the point of view of the scientists or the factual people to convert stories of management so that it kind of clicks more with you. The narration which comes in the form of a story can be just fascinating. And it is that aspect of Mr. Lulla that led him to write, I think, more than 100 fables. So, and we went through some of them. They have been like, I think, marvelous gems of writing, which kind of connects you instantly to think and to get connected to improve the management issues in your own organization. So I'll request him today to start with his one of the many fables. This one is, I'm sure, very, very close to his heart. So over to you, Suresh Bhai, for your first fable.
Thank you again, Dr. Agarwal. I'll just complete the Juran advice I got on day one. He said, if you can't say it simply, you don't know it.
Very nice.
To demystify subjects, and stories is a good way of demystifying. Okay. We all know that Dr. Vijay Agarwal has many avatars. In his current avatar, he is the president of the Consortium of Accredited Healthcare Organizations, CAHO. Did any of you know that Dr. Vijay Agarwal is the Qimpro Platinum Standard for the year 2019 in its 30 years of awards? The panel of judges had a hard time figuring out For what citation should we be giving him the award? He's got so many dimensions. Finally, they anchored on to CQI, seeing him as a crusader for quality improvement in healthcare. And I believe CAHO is a platform for that. Do you all know that Dr. Agarwal was a student leader and activist? That he is a pediatrician of repute, and that he introduced the National Pulse Polio Program. He's very shy about all this. He doesn't tell us. And above all, Dr. Agarwal is a good listener. I underline the word, listener. That is the attribute of a good leader. We're all taught reading, writing, speaking, everything. We're not taught listening, empathetic listening. And I do believe Dr. Agarwal is a benchmark for that. So let's go to the participants. I believe all are members of CAHO. Thank you for coming. This is our first Quality Fables chat. Thank you, Dr. Agarwal, for partnering with Qimpro, for CAHO Qimpro partnership in this Quality Fables chat series. A quality fable is not about animals. It's not about fiction. It's a combination. Quality fables are based on real people, real experiences. Dr. Juran demystified quality management. He would ask a question: who defines quality? The answer is customer. Customer defines quality. In manufacturing, the customer receives an output from an organization and its process, and judges whether the product is good or not. Does it meet expectations? Think of buying a car. In a service industry, say a hotel, the doorman is a moment of truth. The customer is part of the process. The customer goes to the check-in counter, the customer goes to the room, orders food, laundry, etc., and checks out. Each is a moment of truth. Assuming you had a wonderful experience, but your checkout process was delayed and you were getting itchy about your flight, you'd get upset. All the good experiences forgotten through that one moment of truth. Service quality is far more difficult than manufacturing quality. Healthcare. healthcare is even more difficult than a normal service industry. Why? Human life is at stake. Your processes have to be reliable apart from having quality. A patient is with you for probably 4 days, 5 days, a week, a month. There are several moments of truth. Admission process, meals process, laundry process, checkout, education, particularly in a school. Who is the customer when a child joins school? It's the parent. As the child crosses grade 3, 4, 5, the child becomes the customer. Understanding needs has to be done proactively. The most difficult is education, where a child is going to be with you for 10 years in school. Now, I want you to imagine an organization, and there are silos. Silos which have names of functions. That's how we are organized. Your visiting card will tell me which silo you belong to. Goals are set in the silos, and the whole financial system works in silos. Financial planning, financial control, financial improvement. Where is the customer? The customer is outside the silos. The customer receives output from work that flows horizontally across the functions, across the silos. Managing this work, a process, calls for quality planning, quality control, quality improvement. You need 3 processes to manage for quality. It's on these processes that we have chronic problems. They don't belong to the function, but they're sitting on the fence. They belong to neither of the 2 functions. And these chronic problems are like cancer cells. They grow. They should not be legitimized in the budget, which means rejection rates should not be legitimized. Inventory should not be legitimized. What this fable will tell you is also about you need to see a problem with your own eyes, an autopsy of sort. If you don't see it with your own eyes, you'll make assumptions and the solutions will be very complex. Improvement is not a bottom-up subject. It is a top-down subject. Improvement projects should always be approved by senior management. The root cause of a chronic problem is invariably a surprise, and you will see it in the fable. Now, there are terms we use in quality that you will recognize very easily. What is the symptom of a problem, we ask? We use the term chronic to deal with the root cause of a problem. Where there's a symptom, we control it by addressing that sporadic change back to the standard. We use terms like diagnosis. We use terms like remedy. In fact, an organization is as good as a human being. Multiple systems interacting with each other. And what a doctor does is essentially quality management of the human body. So I'm going to now go into a fable, legitimizing absenteeism. The background is that in 1989, I was called by the chairman of Tata Steel, Mr. Rusi Modi, to come and explain what this fancy Juran methodology is. I'd been advertising in Business India. He saw it. He called me. So I went to Bombay House, and there was Mr. Modi with nobody else in the room, just me. And after the basic formalities, he said, "What do you do?" I said, "I consult on quality management." Oh. The next question was, what is quality management? So I tell him, planning, control, improvement. Oh, you mean quality control, ISO 9000. I said, no, I mean quality improvement. So he looked at me quizzed and said, so how is it different? I asked him, what is your failure rate? And he said, 3%. Can you believe it? He said, 3%. Tata Steel was the darling of the share market. And the chairman is telling me their rejection rate is 3%. My first reaction was, that must be a lot of cost of poor quality. He said, what? I don't understand the term. I said, there are wasteful costs associated with rejection. He said, no, nothing is rejected. Even my seconds in steel have a place in the open market. And there's a pent-up demand. So I tried explaining to him that, look, there is a method for estimating cost of poor quality. And I'm going to talk to you about it. So as I was talking to him about internal failures, external failures, etc., he was doing off-the-cuff guesstimates. And we arrived at a figure of 10% of total cost is committed to chronic waste. I wanted to tell him it's probably 25%, but I kept quiet, and he was happy with 10%. Surprise. He said, will you speak to my top management about this? So he called me, and the exclusive 12 top people that included Dr. J.J. Rani, K.C. Mehra, Ishat Hussain, you name it. They were sitting in the first row. at a chalet in Dimna, Bihar. And the body language looked, we are bored. Quality is not our subject. It's there for the factory, for the plant. By the end of the day, the body language changed, and they all agreed that the cost of poor quality is 10% of total cost. Ishaq Hussain, the finance director, started feeling very uncomfortable because their profit to sales was of the order of 12%. Next morning, he whispered something in Mr. Modi's ear. And Mr. Modi came marching up to me, caught me by the collar. He had a sense of humor and said, "You know nothing. My cost of poor quality is 35% of sales, not cost." There was a silence in the room. So Dr. J.J. Irani said, if that is the case, and we adopt continuous quality improvement, we can become the lowest cost steel producer in the world. And he set a vision for the year 2000 in 1989. Tata Steel became one of the lowest, in two product lines, it became the lowest cost steel producer. It used that strategy to acquire units globally, sick units, and turn them around. So let's go back to Jamshedpur, and we are now with Mr. Modi and saying, where do we do the pilot work? And each head of a division said, do it in my area. Mr. Modi stood up and said, hang on. I have 65,000 employees at Jamshedpur alone. Quality cannot happen with a few people. It has to be a culture issue. Selling the idea to 65,000 people would be very difficult, but they will understand if they see results that benefit them. So nominations started. Leaking roofs in the quarters. Every year they repair them and they leak. Garbage not collected in the quarters. Let's take a look at garbage not collected. A senior team was formed and they diagnosed the problem and found that the dump trucks were not picking up the garbage in spite of being new dump trucks under warranty. They were down for repair, and they had bought it from a sister company, Tata Motors. Why were they down for repair for such a long time? Spare parts. Spare parts were not available. So how were they repairing the trucks? They were purchasing spares in the open market in Calcutta. In the open market, the rejected spares from Tata Motors had found their way. And they were paying a premium price for these spares, which did not function the way a proper spare should. Are you beginning to see the magnitude of customer quality? An uninvited guest to garbage not collected was absenteeism. People were falling ill because garbage was not collected. Because they were falling ill, they were not reporting to. Now, this was an elephant-sized problem. Absenteeism across the plant was an elephant-sized problem. What was the absenteeism? 1%. It didn't get noticed. 1%. We can accommodate that. So the management team factored absenteeism into the operation plans and budgets. The Quality Council of the steel plant said, let's select absenteeism as one of our 5 problems. Quality control, we know, we've got ISO, but quality improvement challenges the standard and we get a gain. But 65,000 people at the factory, elephant-sized problem. Eat it bite by bite. So you had to break it down, project by project. The bite-sized pilot project for absenteeism was localized in the smallest division, tubes division, by senior management. The first thing was estimate the cost of work quality of absenteeism. The works manager, Mr. Agarwal, at the tubes division, looked for non-controversial numbers. It is not important to be precise in your estimates of cost of work quality. The order of magnitude is so large, it doesn't change your decision. So, if an employee is absent, you recruit a badli for the day. A badli is not as trained as your worker. As a result, you get variations in the turbulence, lack of experience. So what is the COPQ here with non-controversial numbers? 14 lakh per month, 1,400,000 into 12 months, an alarming COPQ in 1990. So the diagnostic journey involved meeting absent workers at their home. The question, why are you absent? We got a surprise. My son is not well. Is it serious? No, just a simple cough and cold. In which case, why are you absent? Now came the answer. We have a hospital on site and the paperwork took 3 hours at our hospital. Remember, There were no laptops, no desktops in those days. Then I waited in another line with my son to see the doctor. That was, it budgeted into their plans. The Quality Council at the steel plant selected absenteeism. Big problem, 65,000 people at the plant. How do you eat an elephant-sized problem, bite by bite? So we went to the tubes division to get started and pulled the alarm for cost of poor quality. A daily badli and variations in tube lengths were the two points we took. Cost of a badli, variation in tube lengths led to one more step, trimming, physical waste, loss of productivity. So what was the cost of poor quality? 14 lakhs per month, 12 months, very large. The diagnostic journey involved meeting absent workers at their home. Why are you absent? My son is not well. Is it serious? No, just a simple cough and cold. In which case, why are you absent? The answer, the paperwork took 3 hours at our on-site hospital. Then I waited in another line for my son to see the doctor. That was another 1 hour. Thereafter, I waited for half an hour for the prescribed medication, by which time, sir, you had already marked me absent for the full day. The remedial action, re-engineering at the on-site hospital. It reduced admissions procedures from 3 hours to 30 minutes. The smallest division of the plant had a multiplier impact on the entire campus of the steel plant. What are the lessons? Chronic problems should not be legitimized in the budget. Use a structured problem-solving methodology. I believe Dr. Lalu is planning a masterclass on this subject. Elephant-sized problems must be broken to bite-sized projects. All problems are solved project by project. When estimating cost of poor quality, work with non-controversial factors and non-debatable numbers, and see the problem with your own eyes. Improvement projects should always be approved by senior management. Over to you, Dr. Agarwal.
Thank you, sir. You may stop sharing the screen now, sir. So I think it's really fascinating that how a simple thing which looks simple like absenteeism could save crores of rupees to a steel plant. Issue is this: what kind of lessons that we can learn for the healthcare industry. So, first of all, I think the very fact that what you talked about is to start identifying the chronic problems and the way you diagnose that, especially problems which are not belonging to any specific department, cross-functional. It's like absolutely like the police stations that the murder did not take place in my area. So it doesn't belong to me. And so every police station washing off their hands, same thing happens in, I think, every organization. And that's an absolute great learning, that we have to identify the chronic problems which are plaguing our institutions. And the other important learning, as I could see, is the power of root cause analysis. And for that power of root cause analysis, that not doing the kind of root cause analysis that we sit in our office only and trying to imagine what the root cause is to see at the problem with your own eyes. And I remember about there are stories which can then come out if you will do a root cause analysis, and you can form again, I think, very nice stories which may resonate with the healthcare people. I think our friend, Dr. Lalu Joseph, often tells us about that story of a housekeeping worker who got a needle stick injury, which is a very common thing in, I think, most organizations, most healthcare organizations. You will find some needle stick injuries, and which should really not happen at all. And if you see, all right, needle stick injury, it happened, there is a process as to what should you do after the needle stick injury, what should the worker do, what should this be done, etc. So there is one cost of the poor quality that can be easily calculated at that time. But if you go into the root cause, which she did in her institution, and found that the injury happened because the puncture-proof boxes were full. They were overflowing. Why were they overflowing? Because the other boxes were not available. Why were those boxes not available? Because the storekeeper who was to order was on leave. So I think when a story like why the needle stick injury happened, and you can say that it happened because of the storekeeper being on leave, it will arise interest in people, and you will have to form that chain, and you have to calculate the cost of the poor quality, even by the sheer needle stick injuries itself. And that's where I think the top management will start to understand that they have to pay attention to these aspects of quality. And then what you said, another very important thing, and that of badali, that is a replacement worker. Now, in healthcare, the attrition is so common, and this replacement culture is so common that you get a ward nurse to go and do work duty in a cardiac care unit or a intensive care unit, or even from one intensive care unit to a neonatal intensive care unit. I don't think that we even try to measure the cost of poor quality in such kind of situations, because in our situations, I would say that, as you understand, that medical errors are at galore, they are huge. So something more is added. But I think that your story is so fascinating. It should give, I think, inspiration to a lot of the healthcare people who are present over here. And I think we need to take this message that what is the cost of poor quality arising out of such chronic problems, or arising out of such replacement workers. They can cause havoc, and I would say in relation to the healthcare, It may be even an issue of life and death. But my question to you, Suresh Bhai, would be, how would you like to guide, let's say, the healthcare institution? Our thing is that we are not a 50, 60,000 workforce kind of people. So the other thing is that we are very fragmented. So there are needle stick injuries happening in number of institutions. How do you think that we can try and address, as you said, we may have to take some issues and start addressing it, and we have to probably start again coming out with quality fables, or I would say fables, relating to the actual incidents that have happened in the hospitals. So, any guidance?
I'll talk in general terms. In any organization, there are three kinds of processes. One is the value creation. The value creation process delivers the output to the customer. There are support processes, maintenance, accounting, recruitment, etc. And there are supplier quality processes, supplier processes. Now, in service industry in general, over 50% of the problems that surface in a hotel or an airline, over 50% have their root cause in supplier processes. About 25% or 30% come from support services, and only 20% from the actual value creation process. But whom do we blame? We blame the doctor, we blame the value creation process of the doctor. And it goes to the extent that sometimes the doctors even accept the blame. And they're very unfair. I'll give you an example. There was a very, very reputed cardiac surgeon in Bombay. I won't mention his name. He was like a national rock star for that specialization. Now, there was a 10-year-old child, a girl, in a small town. And she needed a surgery, and it was complicated, so she needed the best. So this magnanimous doctor agreed to do the surgery free. People were coming from the rural area. The faith they had, the trust they had in the doctor. Now, on the day of the surgery, the child was taken into the OT. The parents sat out with little religious books. They were, praying for their child. And while they were waiting, suddenly, there was a power outage. And that standby genset that had to trigger off in 5 seconds took a minute. The child died. What happened to the doctor? He lost his reputation. Now, was it the doctor's fault? It's a support service, maintenance practices, maintenance of your standby generator. It may never be used, but it has to work when required. The interdependencies of the processes are so high. Have I made my point? Supplier quality. The meals, are they outsourced? The wrong meal goes to a diabetic patient. Who's to blame? The nurse that brought it. We take the blame. The symptom of the problem is there, but the root cause is somewhere else. And purchasing is a very, very big hatchery of importing quality problems. If time permits, I'll give you another quick one. Does time permit?
Sure. Yeah, sure, sir. Go ahead. In the meantime, I can say if anybody has question, they can raise their hand. I'll try to unmute and they can ask. So please go ahead, sir.
In 1997, I was invited by Mr. Bhargava of Maruti to the plant for a supplier convention. Not to the plant, to the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel, for a supplier convention. He wanted something on quality improvement from the Duran side of it. Now, his address to the audience of A category suppliers, 200 of them. Can you imagine how many suppliers they have? 200 were A category. He's congratulated them for being A category customers, suppliers, and said, I'd like you to prosper as Maruti prospers. We'll have a good partnership. So from next year, I want you to drop the price by 3%. The suppliers were shocked. You want us to prosper and you're asking us to drop the price by 3%. He saw the expressions and he was doing it to dramatize it. He said, I have a solution. I have trained my purchase department in quality improvement. And they are going to work with you. Each will adopt a couple of suppliers. They're going to work on your processes to reduce your cost of poor quality by 10%. I want 3%. 15.7. Can you visualize the impact? And you have to think differently. Quality is not a department or a department.
Excellent. So one Dr. GB wants to say, I am unmuting you. Dr. GB, please ask your question.
I am Dr. Vatsavasalam from Coimbatore, sir. Fantastic, Dr. Vijay Agarwal. And it's a great privilege to listen to this doyen of quality. We are sitting in a two-tier city. And we go through this. I've been running this hospital for the past 46 years. You can imagine that. And it's the most difficult industry to be in. But patients want excellent results at a low cost. India is a low cost, but they want the best results. When they go to the court of You gave us the best lecture. I'm extremely thankful to CAHO and Dr. Vijay Agarwal for listening to this doyen of quality. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. JB. Mr. Lulla, it was mainly to thank us, congratulate you for this excellent talk. And also to, of course, he's highlighting that in our industry, we are at the moment, because the whole issue of affordability, we want the best quality, we want the lowest prices. So actually speaking, to work on the quality improvement to make our costs affordable and to calculate the cost of poor quality is becoming even more important. Is there anybody else who, so please raise your hand. I could see Lalu, will you like to say something, some comment?
So it's been a great session, very interesting, and really looking forward to many more sessions from your side. And I think it's a great interaction, the two of you, a lot of wisdom sharing, which is extremely important for people like us, and to also relate to other industries to try and see what we can learn out of this experience, and particularly in the form of a story. I really enjoyed this story and look forward to many more stories from you, Suresh sir.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I think that it has been great. Just, I think there is somebody else raised a hand. Let me see. Just 1 second. Yeah. Madam Rama, please go ahead and speak.
So it was wonderful, sir. I really enjoyed your interactions. And of course, I've heard Suresh Lulla sir talking earlier. I mean, he talks, his experiences are something which may be even on the industrial side, but it almost similarly, it applies also into the healthcare division. And I mean, especially when you talk about practical aspects, and you, of course, you stressed on absenteeism, but I think there are many more topics which you can also relate to us and as a CAHO forum, like, you know, how to create a sense of belonging to for any of the hospital staffs. Like, you know, I think that is one which I feel the pulse in most of the organizations. They have this chaltaye attitude, and, you know, they don't. So that, I think you can also talk maybe in your future meetings. Thank you.
Ramaji, what we expect from you is a project on the cost of poor quality, because I think this is one area where our CEOs and the heads, they are not focusing on quality because they still consider quality as a wasteful expenditure or an imagination only of NABH and things like that. So I think this issue of cost of poor quality needs to be taken very seriously. And I think the root cause analysis and creating stories out of that, I think that is the great learning from the story today. And we had another one, Suchitra. Please, madam, you can speak. Suchitra ji, please speak.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful session, and it was very nice meeting our senior people and sharing the wisdom. Sir, I also agree totally with what you have told your fables today, because I in my hospital, I'm an enabled quality manager, but the problem is trying to get the basic things requirement also takes a lot of effort, and then speaking beyond that is a big task. But we have to initiate it, sir. As you told, we have to initiate the quality of what is the cost of poor quality. I think that's a very good suggestion. And Dr. Suresh sir has spoken very nicely. I enjoyed the session, sir, because we need people to share the experiences. And it is not a one-day task. It is a lifelong process. And we should make a beginning somewhere. Thank you very much, sir. I have no questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
We hope
just
that this
appreciation.
group, the next session, next Fable will be on 8th of December, Tuesday. And after that, it will be the second Tuesday of every month. So 8th of December. And we'll look at another great session with Suresh Bhai, and we'll listen to his next Fable. So thank you very much. And we are sorry for some of the technical glitch that happened today in between. So sorry for that. Thank you so much.
Unless like it, sir,